I wake to the sharp tang of bleach, already kneeling. My gloved hands grip a mop, its head heavy with crimson water. The apartment is cold, the air still. A broken window gapes open to the pre-dawn gray, letting in a faint, metallic chill. I am cleaning. This is my task. It always is. My fingers brush the smooth, cold brass key in my pocket. It's always there. A small comfort. The silence in the room feels too deep, too heavy. It presses in. I glance at the wall clock. The minute hand twitches, then jumps back, ticking against itself. It does that sometimes. A small wrongness. I log it. The shadows in the corners of the room seem to writhe. Not just shifting light from the street lamp outside, but a slow, deliberate undulation, like something breathing in the dark. My gaze drops to the floor. The blood, thick and dark, has pooled near the baseboards. I've scrubbed most of it, but this patch, it's different. It isn't just a stain. The edges are too sharp, too defined. As I watch, a thin tendril of red extends, then another, like roots seeking purchase in the linoleum. They stretch, connect, forming intricate lines. Not random. They are forming shapes, letters, a word. My breath catches. The air grows colder, pressing against my skin. I don't move. I just watch the blood write. It spells out a single, impossible name. Mine. The blood pulsed, a slow, dark beat against the linoleum. My name spelled out in crimson, hummed with impossible energy. I didn't move. My breath hitched. This was new. This was personal. But the task remained. I forced my gaze away, gripping the mop handle. As I rose, the kitchen door creaked open. Not a draft. It was Alara. Her eyes rolled back. A fixed, unsettling smile stretched across her face. The pattern must be preserved, she intoned, voice flat. Deviation invites dissolution. Her eyes snapped back, smile vanished. Need help with that, Tvero? She asked, voice normal, gaze sweeping the floor. I shook my head. The fluorescent light above flickered, then died, plunging the room into deeper shadow. I heard the distinct clink of the mop bucket, now inexplicably across the room, near the broken window. My hand instinctively found the smooth, cold brass key in my pocket. I gripped it, the familiar weight a small anchor. A sharp ache flared in the scar on my left forearm. A jagged line from the whispering walls last cycle. The air grew heavy, thick with an unseen presence. It wasn't just in the corners. It was here. Breathing. The fluorescent light above died. The room plunged into deeper shadow. The mop bucket, inexplicably, now sat near the broken window. Its distinct clink still echoed in the sudden quiet. My hand tightened on the brass key in my pocket. The familiar weight offered little comfort. A sharp ache flared in the scar on my left forearm, a jagged line from the whispering walls last cycle. The air grew heavy, thick with an unseen presence. It wasn't just in the corners now. It was here, breathing, watching. I turned towards the window. The pre-dawn gray outside offered a faint, distorted reflection of the kitchen. My own weary face stared back. Then a flicker, not of light, but of movement within the glass. A shape, tall and impossibly thin, seemed to glide behind my reflection. It was gone before my mind could fully register it. A trick of the light, I told myself. A shadow playing games. But the cold intensified. A metallic tang filled my nostrils. I looked closer at the pane. My reflection was still, but the glass itself was different. A faint smear, like ash, clung to the surface. It hadn't been there a moment ago. I reached out, my gloved finger brushing the cold glass. The ash was fine, gritty. It clung to the fabric. A faint, acrid smell, like burnt paper, rose from it. It left a dark, smudged fingerprint on my glove, too large for my own hand. The silence pressed in again. The blood on the floor pulsed faintly, my name still etched in crimson. I knew what I saw. I knew what I touched. The task waited. The mop bucket, now across the room. I needed to retrieve it. I needed to retrieve the mop bucket. It sat by the broken window, a dark silhouette against the faint pre-dawn light. My gloved hand, still bearing the smudged print of impossible size, felt heavy. I took a step. The floorboards groaned beneath my weight. Then a sharp, metallic clang echoed from the kitchen counter. My head snapped towards the sound. The stack of clean plates, neatly piled, had toppled. Shards of ceramic now glittered on the linoleum, reflecting the dim light. No breeze, no tremor. They simply fell. My breath hitched. I told myself it was the old building, settling. But the silence that followed was too absolute, too deliberate. My left forearm throbbed, a jagged scar from the whispering walls, burning with a familiar, unwelcome heat. I reached for the brass key in my pocket, my fingers closing around its cold, smooth surface. A small anchor. The air grew colder still, pressing against my face. A low, guttural growl, too deep for any animal, vibrated through the floor. It wasn't just in the corners now. It was here, in the room, a palpable weight. My eyes darted to the blood on the floor, my name still stark and red. The tendrils seemed to pulse, faintly. I didn't move. I couldn't. The fear, cold and sharp, began to prickle at the edges of my resolve. This was not a trick of light. This was not the building settling. This was something else entirely, and it was angry. The growl deepened, a sound that seemed to tear at the very fabric of the air, vibrating not just through the floorboards, but directly into my bones. The cold intensified, a sharp, biting chill that stole the breath from my lungs. From the darkest corner of the room, where the shadows had writhed moments before, a shape began to coalesce. It was not solid, not truly defined, but a shifting, undulating mass of deeper darkness, impossibly tall, impossibly thin. Its form seemed to absorb the faint light, leaving only a void where it stood. I couldn't discern features, only the impression of something vast and ancient, a presence that pressed down on me, crushing the air from the room. A low, wet thump echoed as it moved, a sound of immense weight shifting without visible effort. My gaze was locked, my body rigid, unable to flee. The brass key in my pocket felt like a burning ember, my only connection to a reality that was rapidly unraveling. As it drew closer, the tendrils of blood on the floor, spelling my name, pulsed violently, then retracted, vanishing into the linoleum as if consumed. The air shimmered, distorting the broken window, and for a fleeting moment, I saw not the pre-dawn gray, but a swirling vortex of black and crimson beyond the pane. Then, with a sound like tearing silk, the entity dissolved back into the shadows, leaving behind only an unbearable silence and a single deep gouge in the floorboard where it had stood, too large for any claw, too clean for any accident. My name was gone from the floor. The silence that followed was a physical weight, pressing down, stealing the air from my lungs. My chest burned. The cold, though, remained, a deep, bone-aching chill that seemed to emanate from the very walls, clinging to my skin. I stared at the floorboard, at the impossible gouge. It was too deep, too clean, a perfect scar on the wood, a testament to what had just been here. My fingers instinctively went to the brass key in my pocket. Its cold metal, a small anchor in the swirling dread. I needed to move. I needed to leave. Every instinct screamed for escape, for the open air, for anything beyond this suffocating room. I pushed myself up, my muscles stiff, protesting with a dull ache. My gaze darted to the broken window, then to the apartment door. Both felt miles away, impossibly distant, as if the room itself had expanded. As I took a tentative step towards the door, a low hum began. Not a sound in the air, but a vibration through the floor, through my feet, up into my chest, resonating with my heartbeat. The shadows in the corners deepened, coalescing, not into a defined shape, but into a pervasive sense of watchful eyes, of unseen presence. The air grew thick, heavy, like trying to move through water, each breath a struggle. I tried another step, but the floor seemed to resist, my feet sinking slightly, as if into soft earth, holding me fast. The hum intensified. A silent roar in my skull, a clear message. I was not meant to leave. Not yet. The task was not finished. This room was a cage, and the entity, or whatever remained of its influence, held the key. The hum, once internal, now vibrated the very air around me. A low guttural thrum that resonated in my teeth, rattling the bones in my jaw. It wasn't just sound, it was pressure, a physical weight pressing against my chest, making each breath shallow and ragged. The shadows, previously just watchful, began to writhe with a new intensity. They stretched, elongated, no longer mere absence of light, but something viscous, reaching. A cold, unseen hand seemed to press against my back, pushing me forward, away from the door, deeper into the room. My feet, still rooted to the floor, felt a strange, sucking sensation, as if the linoleum had softened into mud, pulling me down, inch by agonizing inch. I tried to pull free, but the floor gripped me tighter, a silent, insistent command that bypassed thought and went straight to bone. The brass key in my pocket grew impossibly cold, burning against my thigh, a stark reminder of the anchors I clung to, and the forces that sought to sever them. The air grew heavy with the scent of ozone and something else, something metallic and ancient, like old blood and forgotten iron, a taste on my tongue. I could feel the presence now, not just perceive it, but feel it, a vast, hungry awareness settling over me, a predator finally closing its jaws. The room itself seemed to contract, the walls leaning inward, the ceiling pressing down, a slow, deliberate crush. I was not just stuck. I was being consumed, the very space around me folding in, relentless, demanding. My lungs burned, not just from lack of air, but from the sheer, suffocating weight of its will. The pressure eased, but the memory of it lingered, a phantom weight on my chest. Each breath still felt shallow, stolen. The room, though no longer actively contracting, seemed to hold its breath with me. Every shadow now felt like a hidden eye, every creak of the old building a deliberate whisper. My own footsteps echoed too loudly, alien in the sudden, brittle silence. I knew it was gone, for now, but the knowledge brought no relief, only a deeper, colder dread. My skin crawled with an unseen touch, a persistent phantom brush against my neck, the back of my hand. I kept turning, my gaze darting to empty corners, half expecting to catch a glimpse of something that wasn't there, yet was. The air still tasted of ozone and old iron, a metallic tang that clung to my tongue, a physical reminder of what had just transpired. My hands, still gloved, trembled slightly as I gripped the mop. The brass key in my pocket felt less like an anchor and more like a brand, searing cold against my thigh. A constant, undeniable proof. It had seen me. It had known my name. The thought burrowed deep, a cold worm of paranoia. I was no longer just cleaning a room. I was being watched, observed, my every move catalogued by an unseen, ancient awareness. The task remained, but the world around it had shifted, subtly, irrevocably. I was tired, so deeply tired. But the blood still needed scrubbing. The pressure in the room receded, not with a sudden release, but a slow, deliberate exhale that left the air thin and brittle. The oppressive weight lifted from my chest, allowing a shallow, ragged breath to escape. The intricate blood writing on the linoleum had vanished, leaving only the familiar, dark crimson pool I was meant to clean. My name, etched in impossible gore, was gone. Yet the faint, almost imperceptible lines where it had been seemed to shimmer in the low light, a ghost impression on the floor, visible only if I looked just so. I knelt, mop still in hand, the heavy, wet head a dead weight. My shoulders slumped, the exhaustion of physical ache deep in my bones, settling into every joint. The silence that followed was not peaceful. It was watchful, a predator holding its breath, waiting. I could still feel the phantom brush against my neck, the cold awareness that had settled upon me like a shroud. My fingers instinctively sought the brass key in my pocket, its cold weight a small, constant truth against my thigh. It was still there. I was still here. The room looked normal, almost. The broken window still gaped. The pre-dawn gray still bled through. But the shadows still seemed too deep, too hungry, clinging to corners with an unnatural tenacity. This wasn't over. It never was. This was just a pause, a temporary reprieve before the next impossible wrongness began. I had to keep cleaning. The blood remained. The mop felt heavier now, each strand of crimson-soaked cotton a leaden weight against the linoleum. My gaze lingered on the floor, where the impossible script had been. The faint shimmer remained, a trick of the light, or perhaps a lingering echo of what had been. It was a scar, invisible to anyone else, but burned into my perception. I knew it would fade, eventually, only to return in some new insidious form. This was the pattern. The anomaly manifests. The pressure builds, then recedes, leaving behind its mark, its lesson. I clean, I endure, I wait. The broken window still let in the metallic chill. The pre-dawn gray still promised a day that would feel no different from the last. My fingers found the brass key, its cold comfort, a familiar anchor in the swirling uncertainty. I pressed it hard against my palm, a small, grounding pain. The shadows in the corners seemed to deepen, to coalesce, not just from the lack of light, but from something else, something patient and vast. I understood now. This wasn't a series of isolated incidents, a string of random wrongness. It was a cycle, an endless, turning wheel, meticulously designed. The entity wasn't just here, it was always here, merely shifting its form, its focus, its cruel intention. It was a tide, ebbing and flowing, but never truly leaving the shore, always pulling me back into its depths. My task was not to clean away the blood, but to witness its return, to log its impossible geometry. I was not just cleaning a room. I was tending a wound that would never heal, a wound that was slowly becoming me, and it would always find me, no matter how clean I made the floor.